In Indonesia, there is a village where animals are disappearing quietly, with no signs of struggle. Livestock would be grazing peacefully, as if nothing could ever go wrong. And then, suddenly, something drags them down into the earth. At first, the villagers thought these were random accidents, isolated incidents that would eventually stop on their own. But over time, the pattern became impossible to ignore. More and more animals kept vanishing. Frightened and confused, the villagers decided to enter the forest to understand what was happening. What they discovered was deeply disturbing. Dozens of deep pits were scattered across the ground, like hidden shelters carved into the earth for something far more dangerous than they expected. Inside those pits lived Komodo dragons, and the situation was getting worse. Day by day, these underground tunnels were expanding closer to human settlements. What once were encounters with livestock slowly turned into direct confrontations with people. The Komodo dragons, once known for avoiding humans, were no longer keeping their distance. In some areas, they even began attacking humans. And because they are a protected species under Indonesian law, nothing could legally be done to remove them. But this problem wasn't happening everywhere in Indonesia. On another island, deep within a different forest, something completely different was taking place. There, underground burrows existed, but Komodo dragons could not enter them, because these shelters belonged to another creature, the hedgehog-like spiny mammal known as the echidna, or porcupine-like spiny animal in the local ecosystem. And here, the rules of survival changed completely. This animal doesn't give up its territory easily. Its body is covered in long, sharp spines that turn any burrow into a deadly defensive zone. For any predator trying to enter, the tunnel becomes a trap lined with spikes. When threatened, it doesn't flee. Instead, it curls its body and locks its spines outward, turning itself into a living weapon. Even large predators hesitate. One wrong move means a mouthful of spikes, injuries, infection, and sometimes a slow death from starvation. Over time, most predators learn to avoid it entirely, which raises an important question. If this spiny animal naturally repels predators, why not relocate it to areas where Komodo dragons are causing problems? Especially since Indonesia's islands are relatively close to each other. In theory, it sounds possible, but in reality, it's far more complicated than it seems. Komodo dragons are expanding their territory, and as they spread, encounters with humans are becoming more frequent and more dangerous. They are no longer avoiding villages like they once did. Instead, they are approaching silently, without hesitation. The natural fear they once had toward humans is slowly disappearing, and as a result, attacks on people are increasing. But this is not because Komodo dragons suddenly became more aggressive. It is because their environment is changing. Their natural prey, especially deer, has become harder to find. And when survival becomes difficult, predators adapt. They begin targeting livestock, and sometimes humans. To them, villages start looking like open feeding grounds, a place where food might simply appear. So why do people still live so close to such danger? In most parts of the world, when predators threaten human lives, there are only two options: remove the predators or leave the area. But in Indonesia, something different is happening. Instead of leaving, people are staying, because they are deeply connected to the land, culturally, economically, and practically. Leaving would mean losing their only source of income. Since the establishment of Komodo National Park in 1980, the region has become one of Indonesia's most important tourist destinations. By 2023, more than 300,000 visitors came to Komodo National Park. Tourism created jobs, supported businesses, and brought life to the local economy. Hotels, shops, guides, and transport services all depend on it. So where would they go if they left? This is why people have adapted to living alongside Komodo dragons. But survival is never guaranteed. Some locals defend themselves with wooden sticks. Others try to drag Komodo dragons away by their tails. Yet in many cases, the outcome is simply luck. There are no fixed rules for when danger will appear, no real guarantee of safety. And this uncertainty led to a controversial idea. Could spiny animals be used as a natural defensive barrier against Komodo dragons? At first glance, it sounds like a biological solution. Komodo dragons rely on biting. That means their most vulnerable area is their mouth. And that is exactly where spines could cause maximum damage. In theory, a defensive encounter could lead to severe injuries, infections, and even death for the predator. But nature is never that simple. Introducing a new species into an ecosystem can create consequences that are impossible to predict. If spiny animals occupy burrows and push Komodo dragons out, the dragons will not disappear. They will move elsewhere. And that could mean expanding deeper into human settlements instead of away from them. History has already shown similar outcomes. In some countries, when certain animals were introduced to control pests, they ended up becoming pests themselves. The balance of nature is extremely fragile. That's why the real challenge is not eliminating Komodo dragons. It is maintaining balance within an entire ecosystem of predators, prey, and humans. There are already more practical solutions being used today. Better protection for livestock, reducing attractants near villages, and ensuring that natural prey like deer remain available in the wild. Because when predators have enough food in their natural habitat, they are less likely to approach humans. In some communities, Komodo dragons are not seen only as threats, but as part of the local identity itself. A recent survey showed that 83% of local residents support coexisting with them, despite the risks. So the question remains, can humans and Komodo dragons continue to share the same land peacefully? Or will nature eventually force one side to adapt even further? And if you were living there, surrounded by these ancient predators, what would you do?